Hi, welcome to the sixth part of the lecture on care work of the gender economics course. Basically, in this part, we will start looking to the not this chapter, but well, Fulbrigh's article on basically measuring care. Where basically, actually, in the Valuing Children article, she has provided a more detailed analysis. In this part, she has actually has done more on she discussed how care can be measured and what are the complexities in measuring care. And we have already told that she has defined five different groups of people who can be cared for, and then she has defined two different types of care: direct care and indirect care. Indirect care actually includes a lot of activities. Actually, in some sense, you can put all economic activities even to the indirect care. Mostly, actually, when we are talking on the care work, we are talking on the direct care, but we might think that still it might be possible to think whether, at least in some cases, indirect care is something we should be taught. And then there are four economic spheres: unpaid care, that's actually the work done in the households; unpaid subsistence production is usually the production done you produce inputs that are usually sold in the market, but produce those inputs yourself and then consume those inputs, or basically give those inputs to someone. Informal market work, where basically, it's a paid work, but it's informal. And then paid, usual market work. This is actually the table where she describes it. If you can see now, you can open it separately and look to it. You can see actually, these are changing diapers, spoon feeding of elderly, changing diapers of the children, spoon feeding of the sick or disabled, are typical direct unpaid work activities. And when we are thinking about the informal market, basically, direct care can be done by childcare worker or domestics or family daycare, babysitters, elder sitters or elder care workers, nurses or informal paid assistants, basically. Indirect care is basically for unpaid and unpaid work, preparing food, doing laundry, cleaning, usually the activities that are not done by the market for everyone, basically. For the paid employment and the informal employment, basically that can include all activities which are directed at a particular group. In case of adults, it can be anyone, any activity, basically. So it's actually a very widespread activities when you look to the indirect care. One interesting element is actually breastfeeding here. According to Nancy Fabre, this is kind of a subsistence production. So input of the food preparation is the milk, and in this case, milk itself is the product of the mother's body. So in this case, we have a product that is produced by the body of the mother and given to the child. And the question might be whether this should be also included by something that the mothers are producing or not, in addition to the time spent by the mothers. So you can look further to the graph, and it's actually direct care is interesting because counseling is actually unpaid work done by them basically for the adults. Which counseling might be also taught, maybe, or visiting doctor, exercising might be an example. All of them might be, part of the sick. Visiting doctor and counseling is you can be sick, basically. But the main point here is actually all activities like sleeping, taking a bath might be also maybe taught as unpaid work. That is direct care. Usually people don't bat adults that are not sick or elderly who are able to do batting. I don't know unless it is unless it is done in a Turkish hammam, or I mean I don't know. It's maybe because between the close family members if they want to do that. So this is the wide extent of the care work, and in many ways, each of these might be necessary to measure each of these to understand the full extent of the care work, basically, including the time spent for them, self-care, and the care for the other adults. Although indirect care might be a factor, however, I'm not sure to what extent it's necessary to measure indirect care, since all activities might provide input for the care work, basically. But in case of direct care, I think all of the entities of this chart is relevant, and you can explore the charts and also the Nancy Fabre's own explanation on the chart. A few points I want to mention are first care assistance. First care drain. Let's say talk on that. Care drain is basically, according to Nancy Fabre, this is done in the developed countries where basically women want to be more free. To some extent, the care and when the people of that country don't want to work, mostly the people who are in the developing countries go to the developed countries and do the care work there. But this is draining, and in some cases those people might not care for their own children. The care work supply in those countries, basically. As a result, the developing countries, while they are providing the care work for the developed countries, they are actually depleting their own the care work available in themselves, and this might have consequences. Basically, I mean the child care there might be inferior, or elder care or sick care might also be inferior as a result of this care drain. So this is a temporary solution, but that temporary solution has also consequences for the whole world, according to Nancy Fabre. Another point is care assistance. Well, basically, according to UN, at least for the children, being looked upon, I mean, being cared is one of the children's rights. And governments, to some extent, in different countries are providing assistance. But in order to be able to provide assistance, and that's actually Nancy Fabre's point, the full dimensions of care should be taken into account. And usually when those full dimensions are calculated, the assistance provided is limited, according to Nancy Fabre. And actually, we have talked on this a little bit before. There was an example when in 9/11 in 2001 in the United States, there was a terrorist attack to the Twin Towers. Basically, people were compensated if a family member of them have died and was earning money, basically, according to the money they earn in the market, but they were not compensated for the work that was done inside of the household, which is also something that is lost for the families. So basically, care work has two dimensions. One is the time dimension, the other one is the money dimension. So how much is this money monetary costs are shared? And here actually pretty much we might think about how much men and women are earning, and to what extent, of course, their income is independent, to what extent they are spent together, and who has control on the money that is spent together, and if they have separate spares, who will contribute most to the childcare expenses. Basically, all of these things are usually taught as within interfamily, issues of the family itself, and not properly measured, and not Nancy Fabre thinks it should be measured. And time spent for care is another thing that should be measured more properly, according to Nancy Fabre. And she offers actually bunch of measurements, like in new disposable income, where actually the expenses for the care work, care of the children or other relatives is subtracted, and where the money only for the earners of the money remained. Disposable time, the time the person is spending for himself or herself. And here actually we pretty much have the case, usually, for example, for the mothers, especially according to Nancy Folbre, when they are caring for the child, usually the time that is spent for themselves will reduce. They are more likely to reduce their leisure time when they work and they have children, while the fathers usually don't do that much, at least not at an equivalent degree. Although maybe that's it has changed since she has written that her articles that should be looked upon. So disposable time, the time spent for the care work by the man and woman, disposable monetary spending, again, I mean the gender parity of the time spending for care parity that takes time into account, care parity, gender care parity that takes money into account, I mean the relative amount of money spent by the woman and man. Those should also be measured to see the an important dimension of the gender inequality issue. And also kind of it should be possible to bring those time and monetary dimensions together according to Nancy Folbre, and that's also a necessity thing to do to see the full picture of the care. So this is the third article. Now we can go to the third text. This time we can go to the fourth text, which is actually again a book chapter, and again she talks on them in this book. Actually, we are covering two chapters. In chapter 6, Nancy Folbre is basically just measuring the care expense and the care time that is spent separately. She doesn't look at gender disparity. I mean, the man and male and female differences, but still she is looking to the time and money that is spent for the children. That's interesting, actually. Valuing children is an interesting title. Well, that is not exactly, I mean, this child is actually so much valuable. It's rather looking to the cost of the children in terms of time and money. And we have seen that there is a lot of critique of this. I mean, but there was also the idea that it's important to see, to be able to understand how much time and money is necessary for raising a child. That's an important. These variables are important variables for anyone who will actually put a policy into effect, and especially that person should also see how that policy is affecting that time and money. And that is directly not only important for the people who are performing that care or spending the money, but also the recipients of the care, children. I have already talked about the employment effect. I mean, the employment usually means actually the leisure time is decreased, although the childcare time might also decrease if the employment really takes a long time. But the first thing usually the mothers do is taking time out of the leisure. Here actually Nancy Folbre has an interesting definition of leisure and work. Here the question has become whether a child should, whether the time mothers spend with their children should be counted as a leisure or work. That will be our starting point of the discussion on how to quantify in terms of time the childcare, and then how to bring the monetary expenses and the time spent for the children together. I wanted to talk more about that, but we are getting close to the again 15 minutes mark. So see you in the next part.